Okay, so I know how to use grep, regular expressions, and e-links. That is why my hair doesn't have to look great. How do you end your suffering with a Linux? Or how do you begin your suffering, right? Because I just saw another of Luke's videos, and yeah, check out his channel over here. He's a really cool content creator who talks a lot about Linux and why it's great for privacy and all sorts of other things. Because, you know, your Windows is calling home all the time. What is it called? Phone home? The thing that ET does, because we use that in German and we say like nach Hause telefonieren. And it means to call home. And it's kind of a joke because of this ET movie, which was very famous when I was small. And personally, I found it pretty weird, but yeah, it seems to be a thing. So if your system is doing the ET, then that's not good. And the Linux doesn't do that, which is like the first and best reason to switch to Linux. Also, it's not bloated and it runs on slow old machines. But so let's say you have made the decision, you don't want your system to spy on you anymore and you want a lightweight system, right? How do you do it? Which one do you pick? How do you start? Because I think a lot of people, as Luke Smith is saying in his video here, are recommending weird shit to beginner Linux users. I totally agree, and I think there is a way around it. Because I remember when I switched to Linux, that was 1.5 decades ago or longer, I don't really know, because it was gradually. And that would be the first thing to do, not to jump into the cold water. And I have a good example here. This is a Debian 11 stick from my husband, because I just crashed my Debian 10 and I wanted to upgrade. But yeah. So first thing, prepare for crashes by doing backups. No backup, no empathy. This is actually a picture I found at IKEA, and it's pronounced IKEA, but I found it there and I thought, yep. And that is before my computer crashed while doing a stupid cleaning of the system, which I shouldn't have done. It's all my fault. But yeah, I just cleaned my old images and dependencies, and that is when my computer said, oh, you don't need the graphic interface, right? And then the graphical interface just said, bye-bye. And yeah, that is how I got to my Debian 11. Not the normal way by just doing the update. Anyway, it's gonna be a 12 soon. You can do the following. You can switch gradually and you can try your, Debian or what you want to choose, Ubuntu or any other graphic system like Linux Mint, something like that, which is user-friendly. You can put that on a stick, like just have your Linux friend put that on a stick for you if you're too overwhelmed with it. I might say that the Windows applications to help you do that are much, much better than the ones that exist for Mac. So yeah, you can try that on a Windows, create a Linux boot stick and then stick it up the ass of your USB port and start the computer and then press either delete or F12 or whatever the combination is to enter your boot menu, as in not the BIOS, you want to enter the boot menu and then boot from that stick. So first find out what combination is needed for your main board to switch you into this boot selector screen, and then there you go, start from this USB drive, which is gonna be some cryptic thing as in like, USB HDD something, right? So and you start from that and then basically the magic happens and you're going to see a model system of, this is a Debian, so a Debian 11 is in this case, on your screen booting up. And you cannot store anything in this system. I mean, if you are a nerd, you can, but you cannot store much in this system usually. Like the basic sticks that you create using Windows tools or Linux tools will give you a little model system in which you can use the browser, scroll around, try different applications, and so on. For me, I use this to recover my data because recovering the data in the TTY is annoying. I didn't want to do that in a text-based way personally because I like the optical feedback of seeing if the files are actually where they are supposed to be and not just blindly trust rsync or CP, which are copying programs you can use in Linux. So this is the first step to installing Linux, just to try a boot stick or flash stick, or what you call it in English, we just call it a boot stick. So you do this and then you check out the Linux on your computer. For instance, do the graphics look okay? Does it run smoothly? Do you like the look and feel? Do you like the applications bars and panels and everything? Do you like the file browser? On Windows, you have Explorer. If you press the start button and R, a little run menu will open, and then you can enter Explorer, which will open your Windows File Explorer. The same thing exists in Linux, but they have different names depending on what kind of file browser you have installed. And usually the different distributions have different collections of software, which includes basic shit like the file browser or file manager. For instance, on Ubuntu, I think you have Nautilus. I'm not super sure, but I think Nautilus is the standard file browser there. I use Debian and Extfs, so I don't use the GNOME shell. I use Extfs, which is my desktop environment. And with this set of software comes a file browser called Thunar, and it's a very, very annoying and limited file browser, but I personally prefer not messing with Extfs, and I want the rest of Extfs. So just a tip, if you have decided on an environment for your desktop and file system browsing shit, don't switch. Like, you do that before you install the whole system, because if you delete that afterwards and install a different one, it's going to be a whole mess, okay? You really don't want to do that, and that is why you try everything out with a flash stick. You just go in there, look at your Linux, and you see like, oh, which one do I like? Is it possible to switch later? Yes, it's possible, but it's gonna create issues, especially if you have installed other stuff. I mean, I do believe that you can do it. I have certainly done it myself. Like, I've switched out all Thunar things from my Extfs for Nautilus because I wanted Nautilus, because back in the day I was a stupid idiot and I wanted Dropbox integration. Yeah, hi Condoleezza Rice. You like my files? I hope you like my tax report or whatever, I don't know, the American government is reading from people who use Dropbox. I don't know. The thing is, you don't know, and if you don't know, then that's not good. Like, if you cannot be 100% sure that no foreign government is reading your shit, or your own government is reading your shit, or some paper pusher working for the government is reading your shit, then your shit is not private. So if you use some service, some cloud, stuff like that, your shit's not really private unless it's encrypted. So yeah, I have my problems with that, and I didn't want to use Dropbox anymore, so now I have just Thunar and not Nautilus. Let's see how long that will last. Now you have tested the systems, different systems. You had different boot sticks. Let's say you had Ubuntu, you had Mint, and you had Debian. They're all pretty similar. And you had the GNOME shell on Ubuntu and you liked it. You think, oh, that's nice. I want to install a Ubuntu now, which I recommend. I call it the girl Linux because it's pretty and most of it works. Sometimes the icons are a mess and I don't know why, but just expect a little bit of a mess. I mean, the thing is, with the Windows, people forgive Windows things like crashes or dependency conflicts, option clashes, all that kind of stuff, because they are used to it being a commercial product and they think like in theory they could call somebody and would actually get the help they need. But in most cases, if you call the Windows support, all you will get is, well, that's a you problem because it's your hardware and this and that is not supported, or you just get a ticket that will never be closed or something like that. So personally, I have not had a good experience with that. Your mileage may vary, but I do think that in the end, if you want to be a power user and if you want to be a Linux user, you want to be a power user at some point, that is someone who's not a nerd but capable of fixing basic problems with their system, right? So I advocate for not everyone becoming a total nerd and a programmer like me. I write 5 different programming languages, and so for me it's not hard to mess with my system. Most useful programming language is of course ANSI, and to write scripts, any kind of scripting language, understanding how shell scripts work in your system, that is very important. Understanding regular expressions, that is something you could get into if you wanted to get into a little bit of system programming and understanding the basic syntax and semantics of scripts and stuff on your system. I recommend that, actually, I do. But let's not go as far as that. You just want to know how to set up your Linux and not suffer, right? So you have the stick, you tried out what you liked, and you found a system that you like. Now you want to install it. You can do that right from the stick. There is a shortcut on your desktop there, and you just click it and follow all the instructions. Today, this is very, very easy. You can basically do it automatically. But if you want to get into, details, you can look at how the partitioning is made up, like the partitioning of your system, because usually you will have a system partition on which your Debian will be installed, and then you need like a swap partition, that is where your system is stored when your computer goes to have a little nap. And there are different kinds of naps. Your computer can take a light, like a REM sleep nap. Yeah, that's standby. And then the computer can do like a really, really deep nap that is saved to disk. And when you wake the computer up from standby, it's gonna be like, oh my god, yeah, I'm here, okay, enter your password. When you wake up your computer from save to disk, it's gonna be more like, hello, computer, oh yeah. Okay, you may enter a password now, dumbass. Okay, that's basically the difference. The rest of that, do the reading yourself, because, you want to be a cool user and not a noob. You got to learn how to research stuff yourself. I'm not going to give all of it to you in one video. I might link some resources down below, but you have to learn how to find this stuff yourself. I learned how to find this stuff myself, and nobody can help you, because whenever a problem occurs with your Linux, and problems do occur, you will have the issue that you have to search stuff on your phone because your computer isn't working. So you have to search stuff on your phone. It's very annoying, and it's really better if you have done it before, if you have researched it before, if you've found the right sites before, so you know where to look at least, and you know what is like trustworthy and what is just a SE optimized Google entry that ranked on first page and will lead you to oblivion. Like a lot of pages nowadays, they try to get you to click on their ads and click on their paragraphs over paragraphs of blah blah blah, where there is no solution, no code, and the code can't be copied. Okay, you have to type it in by hand because they included pictures instead of pre-formatted code divs. I don't know what's wrong with these people, but it's very wrong. So yeah, resources, very important. Oh, another annotation on partitioning. Personally, I like partitioning in a way that your home directory gets its own virtual partition, because I think it's very cool that if you have to reinstall another Linux for some reason, you don't have to overwrite your home directory. For me personally, I think that's very cool, but if you have another solution to back up your home, which is the directory that contains all your files, for me, I always choose the username me, so my home directory is called /home/me. / is the root directory or the basic directory, and then home is the directory that hosts all the user files. So if you have multiple users on a computer, you would have home/me, home/you, I don't know, baby, if your baby has access to your computer. That's a dumb example, but like that, right? And so for the home directory, I choose a distinct partition where all this goes into, and then later I can just, easily copy it. Or when I install another system, because I don't like the system that I tried out, I can just install the system in another partition, and then there's only the system files, but the home directory is mounted from this one partition, which is very handy. A lot of people say, oh, that's so archaic and old-fashioned, and what kind of boomer are you? We don't do this anymore with the different partitions. Personally, I find it pretty helpful, because then the partition is just separate from all your other system crap. So you just find out if you like that for yourself. I just wanted to put it in here because it's kind of neat and it's something that I think people should know. So now you have installed your Linux and you start the computer. What do you do now? So before you copy all your files over to your Linux, your backed up files from your Windows that you have backed up, you will take a look at the applications. So for me, I have a list of applications, and I recommend writing a markup file or some sort of notes file where you document your installation. Because in the beginning, you're going to install a new Linux, I don't know, every other quarter or multiple times a year maybe, until you figured it out. Because even though you tried it on your stick and everything, it's gonna take a while, and you're gonna have to experiment with it to find out what your preferences are. For me, I just have to look into that file and I see, okay, gedit, grep, a bunch of terminal applications, GIMP, Inkscape, and of course Blender to edit my videos. So these are the basic things that I install first before everything else, and then I copy my fonts that I had before. Usually I have folders, like the folder structure in Debian is in a way that you have like open type, true type, and so on. And I just copy my fonts to this directory. I personally don't use any syncing software. I just look at the date of like the fonts in the fonts directory, sort them all by date, and I copy the newest ones because, you know, I added them later usually, so there's going to be like a small discrepancy between the fonts from the system and the fonts that I added later. I'm just going to look it up. It takes 30 seconds, and then I copy the fonts over to the new directory, and that's fine. Like from my backup directory where the structure is the same. And then I will take my backup from my home directory, and I will only copy the files that are up to date. Before I do that, I will structure it like in a completely new way. I will delete all the stuff that I don't need anymore, and I will sync it with older backups. So usually when I create a new backup, I only ever have like one backup or two. And the second backup, that I will check on and see, okay, how many files are duplicates of each other? What do I not need anymore? Personally, I don't have a lot of files because I'm a minimalist, so I do that manually. Like you could do it with rsync, which I recommend if you don't have a lot of files, right? But just to have a complete backup with all new files, like the newer version of the files, you could use rsync and just sync your two backup directories that you have. So I do that, but usually I prep it manually or I change it afterwards manually, which I recommend because then you can put in your structure. My file structure is always set up in a way that I actually never have to use a search tool. If I need to use a search tool, I use find and regular expressions, which is why I strongly advocate for learning how to use regular expressions. They are really the one thing that every Linux user should know to use the search. Even in basic text editors like gedit, you can use regular expressions to replace stuff, to look for stuff. It's really awesome and you should know it. Here's an XKCD comic about it. XKCD is always right. So in my system, the structure works like this. I have folders or directories which function as categories. For instance, I have a photo folder, and then below that are the years, and my photos are under the different years, as in sometimes I have like mobile photos where I upload my mobile photos. I don't want them to be in the same folder, subfolder of 2023 or something, as my DSLR pictures or whatever. I have a videos folder, and that is categorized in a whole different way. I have like a video library because I'm a content creator, which is why I have to categorize my content. And so I have a content library for my videos, which is structured into things like, I don't know, zero waste stuff, kitchen, living, various B-roll categories, and so on, like outside, flowers, decor, all that kind of stuff. So this is how I structure my videos, because I take some videos that are not private, that are just for content creation. Those all go into the content library. And for instance, if I have videos that are personal but also content, I will create duplicates. That's just how you have to do it as a content creator. Otherwise, you will go insane. Just buy a 5 terabyte hard drive and do it like that to save you the trouble, because the few gigabytes are not worth your time or stress. And that is basically all I do. Then I set up my whole file system and, well, brace for something not to work. But that is just how you have to deal with the Linux. And if you are not sure about it and you feel like, oh, maybe I will need my Windows after all, you can either have 2 computers, which, yeah, in the long run is just as annoying as having one computer and a multi-boot. A multi-boot system is harder to set up though. I mean, you can use the bootloader that comes with your Linux, but that might cause some problems with the Windows. You can also use your own bootloader, but all of it will be really hard to understand for normies and people who have never done this stuff before. So if you have a friend who can set it up for you, that would be great. And if you don't, but you have 2 computers, just do that. Just choose the path of least resistance, because you can always come back for resistance and glory later. I personally started with a multi-boot system. I had Windows and Linux parallel, first on my PC, and I had a grub bootloader, and later I just had like the standard Linux system alongside a Windows. In my opinion, it's better to have the Windows first. It causes less trouble with the NTFS. Yeah, that is just my personal preference, and other people might disagree more or less strongly. So personally, if you have a Windows already installed on your computer, you will have to shrink the partition that the Windows is on, and the Windows sometimes doesn't like that. But if you have the opportunity to use just a part of your disk space for the Windows, that'll be optimal, so that you say, okay, sorry Windows, you only get this much, and you can choose that in the installation process of your Windows on your new computer. That would be the easiest, and then the rest of the space can be allocated for the Linux, and I think that's probably the easiest option. Linux doesn't use a lot of space, but Windows tends to go crazy when not half the disk space is reserved for its crap, because Windows is bloatware. So in the end, what I did is I worked with the Windows, and I had 200 or 500 gigabyte hard drive. So half of it was for my Windows, and the Windows was still slow on this computer. It was a ThinkPad. My Linux was running smoothly on the other end, and I just noticed that over time I just had more and more Linux applications. I didn't log on to the Windows anymore, and after I hadn't used the Windows for over 2 years, I just completely wiped that computer, installed a new Debian, and here we are. So I have not used a Windows in many years, except for work, of course, but personally I have not used a Windows in 10 years. I've tried it for content creation purposes because I wanted to check out DaVinci Resolve, and my Windows computer was a faster machine than my Linux computer, because obviously you need that, because Linux is just not claiming as many resources as Windows. It's just more eco-friendly, I guess. So I was using a bunch of graphics applications on this computer, and also CAD software like Inventor, I think, to model stuff that I wanted 3D printed. And after all, I think that was good. It worked smoothly there, and I like the workflow better. But once you have adapted to Linux, it's just really hard to go back, because Linux is so lightweight and so minimalist, and it's really hard to go back to Windows, and it really hurts me whenever there is this function in Linux that you can just press the Alt key and left click into any window and then move the window around where you want it. And if you right click in a part of the window, you can stretch it and resize it, but while holding the Alt key. And so to me, that function missing is just completely making my brain hurt in Windows. And there are so many other examples for this, why I find Windows annoying and slow. And also, if you look at a modern computer, computers are getting faster and faster and faster. But I have used computers since the 90s. And I mean not the early 90s, the 90s, as in 1990. My first computer, I had that before I went to school. So that was actually the 80s. So, and I have seen the internet going from super slow modem user style to wow fast. And after that, the decline set in. Websites got more bloated, more scripts went on the websites, and everyone wanted responsive design, which is fucking stupid. You don't need responsive design. A button doesn't need to greet you after you clicked it and light up and be pretty and do a blop sound. It just needs to be a link. If you think otherwise, you've just been brainwashed by the fashion industry of the internet. I don't know. It's just the design industry. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird that we want all this shit. I remember in the GDR, and socialism is bad, me. In the GDR, all the packaging was super simple, because you wouldn't waste ink on prints of food. Do you know what food is in there? You don't need to print it on it, because that doesn't make any sense. It's noodles in there. It's a solyanka in there. It's goulash in that can. You don't need the goulash image on the goulash can. Everyone knows what goulash looks like. It would just say blue and white or something, goulash. Maybe there were different ones, but when I was a kid, I remember we had a lot of these just very, very simple cans. And then the wall came down and Germany was reunited with the capitalist West. And from one day to another, everything was switched out, and there were all these colorful cans and packagings, and I was just totally overwhelmed as a kid. I was 6. I was like, dude, what? What is this? I want my old shit back. Where is my old socialist crap with no images on it? This is too much. What? And where's the milk? that goes in this plastic container that you put into a plastic can of some kind. Like, what? Where? It's gone. It's forever gone. Yeah, I get sentimental about that, but a lot of it was not pretty and a lot of it was also stupid. I'm not denying that in any way. Like, the thing is, with the opportunities rising, the stupidity is also rising. And now people want to be convinced, like, by pictures, like not even seeing the real product. You know, it would be different if the packaging was just transparent and you could see the real product, like some brownish, mushy goulash in there. Yeah. Oh, now I can convince myself that this is good quality goulash, right? I mean, you don't even do that, but the pictures on the cans are competing in prettiness. That does make sense if you're an idiot, right? The same is with the systems and the internet. As soon as your hardware capacity goes up, what does the stupid internet and users do? Fill it with more crap. We had GIFs, or do you say GIFs? GIFs would need to load, like every single image needed to load in this sequence, and then it would go back and play. Zip, zip, zip. And you had this rotating ad symbol that a lot of little teeny tiny kid bloggers like me had on their website, so you could email them. Yeah, back then we would have our email addresses in a link on our website and nobody would send us spam. Crazy, right? So this rotating ad symbol, it would load like one time and then it would start rotating in the normal speed. And so now we have complete movies going on websites, and sometimes it's not even offering like a low bandwidth option. Sometimes it's just there taking up your bandwidth for no reason, because you don't need that tutorial that doesn't have any photographic detail on it to be in Ultra HD. But websites get more and more and more and more demanding, and the code gets more bloated, and there are 100 different kinds of JavaScripts on websites. That is why we think that our computers are getting slower, and then we want to upgrade. And if you want to have a real upgrade experience, all you need to do is take your old computer, install a Linux on it, and boy is this thing fast again. So that is another thing why I hate Windows and Mac. Mac, I hate most of all of them, because Mac is just not willing to be upgraded. Mac is doing stupid crap with its music libraries and all other libraries, and it's just trying to encrypt stuff in a very, very weird way, so you cannot access it as a user humanly, intuitively. And that is something I just despise. Anyway, this is how you set up your Linux. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, just ask me or ask your Linux friend. I strongly recommend that you find a Linux friend and let them help you out. Just if they come along and say stuff like, oh, you should install a Gentoo, or no, I don't hate Arch Linux, but I don't think it's particularly beginner friendly, but maybe you can try. So the easiest Linux in my opinion to start with is Ubuntu, but it doesn't have rolling updates. So that is why me personally, I would not choose it, because I want to update my distribution whenever I feel like it. I don't want to reinstall a system. If I wanted that, I could choose any other distribution. Arch Linux also has rolling updates, so if you are interested in having a system that can be updated, that's like if you have a Windows 10 and you can go to a Windows 11, right? You don't want to install a Windows 11 all over, delete all your files and reinstall your programs, right? So that is why you do that. Anyway, that's all I have to say, and I hope that you install your Linux and live happily ever after. Just let me know in the comments which distribution you are choosing and how is it going, and what kind of dysfunctional experience did you have. Were you shocked for the first time when you installed your Linux? Were you like, oh no, this isn't working, why isn't this working? What do I do now? How did you solve your problems? How do you go about this? Have you stayed a Linux user, or are you back on Windows or Mac because you're desperate? Let me know, because I want to encourage you guys to come to the dark side. We have cookies. Actually, we don't have cookies if we don't want to. Content creator who talks a lot about Linux and why it's better than everything else. No.